Okay, good evening. This is video 56. For the second time of trying to record this. I've just spent a while recording it the first time, got right to the end and had a technical hitch with Cam Studio, which just about led to me shooting myself. Anyway, we'll try again. So video 56 is hopefully going to be a demonstration of how you can potentially use X-Ways Forensics with its various sister products to facilitate the review of digital evidence across geographical boundaries, i.e. the whole concept of data being processed in one office and it being available for review perhaps by non-digital forensics people in other offices. Those other offices might be upstairs or in the building opposite or in another city or even in another country. Most of the mainstream forensic tools these days have got this kind of facility, often having various naming conventions to it, but ultimately they involve the use of a web platform. So the idea is that the remote person uses a web interface to review data that's been put there by the forensic tool used by the main digital forensics person. X-Ways Forensics, as far as I'm aware, has not got such a facility, i.e. a web review platform, and I don't think they have any plans to implement one. And that's probably because their suite of tools already facilitates this kind of mechanism in a very effective and very affordable way, without the need to have all the complications that go along with web-based systems and databases and all of that kind of thing. So I've taken the liberty of producing a diagram here which hopefully simplifies that explanation a little bit. At the top here you've got my remote offices, so not literally my remote offices because I don't run my own company, but let's say this is remote office 1 in one city, remote office 2, remote office 3, and in each office are a number of non-digital forensics people. So there might be legal people, there might be fraud specialists, they might be image review specialists, or any other myriad of specialisms that you have these days. And the concept is that in each of these offices they have they may all be trained in the use of one particular suite of X-Ways, which I'll talk about in a minute, or perhaps one or two of them are trained as kind of key members of staff and the rest of them just call on this person to help with the review of digital evidence. Either way, in each office they have one or more fairly low-end computers. They really don't need to be anything special. There could be a Windows 7 machine with 4 gig of RAM, 32-bit. Really doesn't need to be anything more than that. And the idea is that each of these machines have got a network connection to a master server. If we scroll down here, this block down the bottom is my digital forensics unit. So in here are digital forensics people with servers and one particular high-end server, which is the mechanism in which this remote delivery will be achieved. So to explain a little bit about the suites that I'm talking about, the digital forensics people will use X-Ways Forensics, the full fat version of X-Ways Forensics. In this case there's 5 digital forensics people in here, so they're looking at an investment of about £6,500 for X-Ways Forensics. So the concept is they do their thing and they save their output, again, which I'll talk about in a minute, on this server here. These people in the remote offices have one of the 2 sister products of X-Ways Forensics. X-Ways Forensics has got a sister product called X-Ways Investigator, which is designed for non-technical people. It's a simple to use utility. One of these days I'm going to do a video demonstrating my daughter using it, who's 8 years old, but I haven't got around to it yet, but I'm going to do it one day, because it is really easy to use, and half a day or a day's training in it is more than enough to enable someone to easily navigate around X-Ways Investigator. An X-Ways Investigator is a lot less far lesser cost than X-Ways Forensics. But there's also an even slimmer line version called X-Ways Investigator CTR, which can only open the custom evidence containers that X-Ways Forensics allows, called CTR containers. They're the equivalent, if you like, of the AD1 images in FTK Imager, and I think it's the LO1 images in the NCase line. They're very, very good evidence containers, very fast, brilliant for dealing with large volumes of files. Just a very efficient system, basically. And X-Ways Investigator CTR costs just a few £100, about £300 give or take. Depends on how many you buy and whether they're perpetual or not. But in this diagram, and this was based on the prices I saw on their website a couple of weeks ago, these four guys could get a copy of X-Ways Investigator CTR each for just over £1,000, as could this second office, and this office over here with this guy on his own, he's got no mates, I assume. He can buy one copy for 289 quid. So these three offices have now got X-Ways Investigator CTR for, under £3,000. And each of them can then therefore open CTR evidence containers created by X-Ways Forensics. So the concept is these guys down here review full evidence, seizures, discs, whatever it is. They create full images, EO1 images, whatever. And during their review, based on consultation between them and the people they're assisting, the people in the remote offices, they find things and put them in these evidence containers. How they find things might be based on a fairly generic system of, common file types, or, we're only interested in emails between person A and person B between dates A and B, whatever it may be, or it might be really specific. We're after JPEG pictures created between these dates by a certain user or something like that. Either way, the output is put into these CTR containers and put on a central server. So that's this big boy here. And it has to be accessible, obviously, by the three remote offices. Now, network infrastructure is not my thing, and this video can't really cover it, but let's all be realistic. We all know that in order to implement any kind of remote viewing system, you need the infrastructure in place. That's as true for a web-based system as it is for something like this. But my point here is that all you really need is an actual file system level link. So this could be a big file server, and these could be VPN connections, which basically enable each of these guys to map a certain network location stored on this server as drive Z or something like that. So once you've got that infrastructure hurdle out of the way, all of these offices and the people in them can access the containers put on this server using X-Ways Investigator CTR, and from that they can review the files, they can find the bits that are relevant and not relevant, they can print the things and whatever they need to do with them. These guys down here with the 5 copies of X-Ways Forensics, that's going to cost them a little over £6,000. So basically for £6,000 down there and about £3,000 up here and a few old computers, you're not looking at more than £10,000 of investment, and obviously your network infrastructure, which is a given capital cost that anyone's going to have to deal with, any company, any agency, they're going to have to deal with that regardless. So I've not factored that into this particular solution. My point is that the infrastructure aside, your licensing and your computer hardware in these remote offices is next to nothing in the big grand world of kind of e-discovery and digital forensics and all of that. Okay, so that's the diagram explained. I'll now do a quick demonstration to show you what I mean. So this is X-Ways Forensics full fat version. It's 18.9, which is quite old, I admit. For various reasons I won't bore you with. I haven't got the latest version with this particular license. Anyway, so I've created a quick case. So I'm pretending here to be the digital forensics person in the main digital forensics office, and I have an image of a computer that's been taken. So what I'm going to do is, rather than getting into the intricate details of a particular JPEG created by a particular person, I'm going to use the more generic concept of type filters. Now if I right click the directory browser, I get this dialog up, and for starters I want the type column to be visible, so it will now appear here. So the type filter will enable me to selectively say, perhaps on the basis of multiple case types, so my digital forensics unit might have to deal with case type A, case type B and case type C, and each case type might need different file types. So to save you some time, what you can do here, the type filter, and I've shown this, how to customize this view in a previous video, which I'll give the link to in the narrative. This is the default view that's provided by Xways Forensics, but I can customize this to my own needs if I want. In the Windows Explorer, in the Xways Forensics folder, there is this file type categories, and in it are the categories and types that populate that dialog box. If you copy that, which I suggest you do, because if you're not careful, these changes can be saved to your configuration. You can initialize it afterwards, of course, but it just saves you messing about. If you copy and paste that, and I've just renamed it as master so that you can just easily revert it back if you need to. But what I've done is I've opened that up and I've created a new version of it with Notepad called case type 1. So I might have 3 or 4 of these different files. In here are merely a few picture type files, a few word process files, an email, and a TTC true type thingy. I can't imagine why else I would want a TTC file, but anyway, I'll just leave it in there. So now if I click this open button and navigate to that file and open it, my type filtering is now reduced to this. So I can very quickly say, right, well this case is the sort that needs this filter, so I'm just going to have all of them, please. I'm going to go right to the top and I'm going to recursively explore everything that meets that filter criteria. So there's quite a bit in here. So for argument's sake, I'm just going to select a few files. Now it's important for me to explain now at this point to make the rest of the video, to make you understand the various steps of the video that I'm taking. It's important to explain. What I'm going to do is selectively capture some of this data and stick it in an evidence container, which is then going to be saved to my server in kind of a virtual sense. And then I'm going to change Xways Forensics to take the role of Xways Investigator CTR, and then I'm going to pretend to be the remote person opening that container. Okay, so let's just say I want these few files here. I've already created some bookmarks called Association 1, 2 and 3. And they've got keyboard shortcuts, Control 1, 2 and 3. So I'm just going to put all of them in Association 1, and these in Association 2, and these in Association 3. Okay, now I'm just going to filter by my report tables and go show me everything, again from case root, remember, so it's listing the files that I've just bookmarked, and I'm going to comment all of them. So highlight all, right click, edit comment, and I'm going to put files that met the type criteria A for your review. Ted. Okay, so I apply it to all 23, so now I've got comments in there. Now obviously I can now, for completeness, I can export that list, including my comments, so name, path, and all the rest of it, unique ID. I can copy all of that as a tab separated list into clipboard and put it in a spreadsheet if I want to, and send that along with the evidence container if I wish. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add all of these files to my CTR evidence container. To do that, I first need to create the container. So again, remember I'm still the digital forensics guy, so I'm going evidence file container new, and that's the remains of my last one that I made earlier that went wrong, so I'm going to call it container 2. Save that, I can put in here information about the digital forensics guys, you know, my telephone number and all of that, like if I want to, and files that met the criteria for case type A, whatever. You can put everything in there. I've already changed the hash value to SHA-1 because that's generally what I like to use, but the rest of it I've left as default. So I click OK. So I click that. It's now saying the container is ready for new input. So it's now sitting in the background waiting for new data, basically. So if I right click this, I now get this additional option, add to remote data image to container, which I'm going to do. It asks me some various bits of information, and you can change this to various states, but this will allow you to export the report table associations into the image as well if you want to. Manually created, I think, means the ones that have been created by the user as opposed to by X-Ways Forensics itself. Remember container edition, that's report table. I can't quite remember what that does. It's not ticked by default. I think it's a default behavior for future. Anyway, if I click OK to that, it will add my files to the container. So I'm now finished as the digital forensics person. I've completed my case. It might be weeks or months down the line. So I'll close that container. It doesn't say anything, it just releases the handle to it, I think. And in a minute I'm going to close X-Ways Forensics. But before I do that, I'll just take these filters off for a moment. What this enables me to do, and what you can do in X-Ways Forensics at least, is you can change the view of the interface. So by default, it will obviously default to the interface of X-Ways Forensics, but you can change it to X-Ways Investigator or X-Ways Investigator CTR, which is what I'm going to do for the purposes of this demonstration. Okay, so I'm going to click OK to that, and X-Ways Forensics will relaunch as X-Ways Investigator CTR, which it now has. So this is it. This is the basic interface. This is what your non-technical person working in your office 300 miles away will launch on their standard Windows 7 32-bit 4GB RAM machine. And all they need to do is navigate to your image that you've created, which I've stored in, I think, here. So remote data image to CTR. So let's pretend that this location is on my server, it's on here, and it's mapped or it's accessible in some way by this guy over here. Okay, so oops, what am I doing? So if I just drag that in, it will allow me to access the container straight away. If I now the thing about creating a case I'm a little bit confused about, it's worth pointing out that I'm using a bring your own device, a BIOD dongle that the guys at X-Ways licensed me to do these videos with. I'm not sure, but I think because I've got the full license for X-Ways Forensics, when I launch the interfaces X-Ways Investigator CTR, it gives me the ability still to create a new case. But I think with X-Ways Investigator CTR, if you just buy it as a standalone tool, you can't actually create a case. You can only access the CTR containers, which is the purposes of what I'm trying to demonstrate here. So I don't particularly want to create a case anyway, but I could do, if I wanted to in this scenario, simply navigate through the files that have been provided to me by this digital forensics person. But seeing as I can create a case, because I've clearly got a special license or whatever, I'm going to, just because I find it a little bit easier to work with. I can't remember what test number I'm up to. So if I just add that to the active case, I can now browse the CTR container like it was in any other way. So I can now preview these Word documents and things that have been made available to me as the kind of non-technical specialist. You know, I'm reviewing these files, I'm printing them off, I'm putting them in folders for presentation to whoever it may be. And I can print them if I choose to, not only that, but I can print them using the very useful cover sheet facility that X-Ways Forensics provides, and in this case X-Ways Investigator CTR. So all my prints come out with information about where they were from and things like that. So I think that's probably about it. It's taken me a while to get around to making this video, and the narrative and the diagram that went with it took me a while to make, and getting the opportunity to record a fairly long video like this is quite difficult to do as well. But I hope that is helpful. I think what it shows quite well is how, without the need to resort to web review systems, if I was starting a small digital forensics outfit tomorrow, and I was opening an office with 3 or 4 forensics guys and people in remote offices that needed to review it, this is how I would do it. I would spend some money on a decent file server, some secure VPN connections, a corporate VPN, and then the remote offices would have a dedicated machine or machines that aren't high spec, and they would each have X-Ways. If it was me, I would put X-Ways Investigator on there, because that enables you to open an X-Ways Forensics case. It's just that you can't do any of the fancy forensic things with it. But if you were really on a strict budget and you didn't have much money, the X-Ways Investigator CTR would be a really quick and affordable way of enabling you to review remote data that's been made available to you really quickly. But for not much more than that, you can go with X-Ways Investigator and get all the benefits that brings. Okay, so I think that's about it. With any luck, I will stop this video this time and it will save, and if it doesn't, I'm going to give up. Okay, thanks a lot, bye bye.